All right, welcome back to another episode of Measurement Talks. We're going to do some quick hits on news from the past week, and then our two big topics are going to be TikTok attribution and then whether or not you trust Facebook's attribution, because one of our friends, Barry Hott, ran a poll, which I think was like the spiciest possible poll in like the perfect way. So we'll talk through what the options were and exact wording was, because I think that that's like a super interesting one. But all right, let's hit it off with the quick hits on the news. The first one was, over the past 2 weeks, people were consistently getting logged out of their Facebook account, which is not funny, but I can't help but find it funny because of what the issue actually was. Brian, my man, how were you feeling?
Yeah, happy. Well, let me tell you, I'm relieved that the issue's been resolved. But the unfortunate piece was that, yeah, it's been, I think, 2 or 3 weeks now where Meta just kept logging me out, logging a bunch of people out. And the root cause was a Google Chrome extension. And so, thankfully, David Herman on Twitter or X, he was able to identify the issue. He's been very vocal about this issue. Haven't been vocal about it, but I've been sharing frustrations every single day, just getting logged out, having to do the two-factor authentication. And it turns out it was a browser extension. So on my side, I removed the extension. And I haven't had any issues since. I've actually over the course of multiple days and multiple sessions, I just click on my little Meta Ads bookmark and it takes me directly to Ads Manager, no log out. So for me, it was the root issue. I think the takeaway here is be really careful about the extensions that you download. Granted, the extension that was the root issue, the team is great. It's a great platform, but it does leave you susceptible to, these sort of bugs and issues. So, might be a good idea to just kind of cleanse your Chrome and remove some of the extensions. Are you running any extensions, Rishabh, on yours?
You want to know what's funny? I was extensions out the wazoo until like 3 weeks ago, but my Chrome updated, and after my Chrome update, it just became super slow, and I was like, why is my Chrome so slow? So, you guys were logging in and out of Facebook. I was literally
Yeah.
turning off Chrome, like quitting Chrome and then relaunching it like every day. And so I did this for 4 days, and I was like, okay, this is foolish. I removed every extension. I uninstalled Chrome and I reinstalled a clean slate. So at this point, I run my browser without anything. And I got to be, again, no knocks on companies building Chrome extensions, but it's like, you got to be careful when you're using a Chrome extension, because the types of issues you can have are really hard to predict. They're really hard to predict. So
Yeah. And I've heard of people's business managers getting hacked through sketchy Chrome extensions. Not to say that the one that was the issue here, and I don't want to name it to give it bad publicity, but not that the one that was affecting it was Chrome was a sketchy extension, but you got to be careful. It's funny, before we hopped on the session, you're like, did no one think of just trying a new browser? And I'm like, yeah, no, not really. I thought it was Ads Manager this whole time. So literally every 10 minutes you just get logged out. I'm like, well, this is just the way of life. This is just how it is running ads. Man, in the future, definitely going to switch browsers first.
dude, yeah, that's what I did. I just used Safari whenever like Chrome was just pissing me off too much, and then
Yeah.
eventually I just like rebooted my Chrome. But all
The,
right, man.
we can close it out with this. I wish Meta would just build a app, an ads manager app on for your phone, right? So you could just, that would have been, because most of my management nowadays is subtle budget changes, optimizations, intraday, actually activating something that I had set the night before, after QA, and the app doesn't do it justice. But anyway,
Dude,
moving
okay.
on.
All right. To anybody out there who wants to build an e-com SaaS company, not that I'm saying that that's a good business to be in, but if you want to build an e-com SaaS company, Brian just gave you an idea. Just make an iPhone app, which is literally just the Facebook control panel, plug into Facebook's APIs, don't do any logic so that way you cannot mess it up, and just allow ad buyers to actually easily buy ads and make
Yeah.
modifications on their phone. And that's it.
And
And like no shenanigans, no special logic on top, none of that. Just
I would
in,
pay
out.
a monthly. I would pay $50 a month for that. I really would, just because of
Oh
the
my God.
convenience of being on the go. Yeah, I mean, I'm the company's media buyer, and so just being on the go, being able to check in on some stuff, make some bid adjustments, change some budgets around, pause some stuff that's like, causing some bleeding for the day, especially for Black Friday. Oh my gosh, you can charge a premium for Black Friday, but
Yeah. And maybe if you want to get cute, then just do a notification that's like a big
oh,
notification every time there's an overspend issue.
huge.
And that's it. That's it. But don't get too cute, because once you get too cute, that's when you start to introduce issues.
Yeah. Oh, push
Okay.
notifications would be huge. That'd be incredible. Push
Yeah,
notification, spend, CPMs anomaly, cost per click anomaly. Here you go. Do you want to take action? Oh, that would have saved people so much money and headache, a couple weeks ago.
totally, totally. All right. Speaking of ecom SaaS, I got some tea. So that is my world. We run an ecom SaaS company, and so we happen to be venture funded. And so I happen to know that a bunch of ecom SaaS companies are out raising capital right now. And I find this like very interesting. So last quarter, it was pretty quiet in venture in general for Series A and Series B. And right now, I think because a bunch of people waited basically, so they waited through the downturn and then they waited through 23 when prices were correcting. And now sentiment is like amazing, right? Because the stock market is high again. VCs have a bunch of money to deploy. And so I'm hearing from a bunch of friends, both in the SaaS world and in the VC world, that there's a ton of companies out raising right now. And so I guess this means two things. One is if you're a D2C operator, it means you're going to start to get calls asking, what do you think about this SaaS company? Brian, I'm sure you've gotten a lot of those calls.
Yeah.
Brian is a favorite of the, hey, what do you think about this company? So, and we have a bunch of friends who are in this camp who are like always getting these like, hey, what do you think about this company calls? Um, and then of course, like what it means is like if you're a SaaS company, you need, unfortunately, or for better or for worse, I guess, you're in a highly competitive market right now. So I think it's going to be super interesting. I don't know of any actual brands who are out doing much of raising. I don't know, Brian. Do you know of any brands doing a bunch of raising right now? I'm only aware of the ecom SaaS world.
I do not. I do not. Yeah. On the brand side, I mean, it hasn't been a topic of discussion amongst the circles that I'm in. So yeah, in fact, the SaaS piece was news to me as well. I did not know that companies were out raising again, which is I think kind of exciting. It's a nice pendulum swing on the confidence. These investors typically look at leading indicators, and so I think it's a positive sign for the industry as a whole. So it's good news for my side.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally agree. All right, last quick hit we got here. Etail West is happening right now. Founder Made is happening later this week. I'm going to be in Austin.
Mhm.
Brian, am I going to see you in person?
You are. I
Hell
got
yeah.
tickets for Founder Made, so I will be there. And I think you guys are hosting a dinner as well, so I will stop by and I'll see you in
Let's
person.
go. Let's go.
The
This time I'm going to be a
as
panelist.
you are. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I get to be in the answering seat instead of the questioning seat. So, but dude, the conferences are back, man. They're back.
They are full force too. I mean, I think last year we started to see signs of life again in the industry with conferences. A lot of pent up sort of people just wanting to get back into the groove of things. But I would say like we're firing on all eight cylinders now this year with the amount of conferences and just events and openness to travel. That's really what was the blocker. I think last year was brands were a little bit more conservative with budgets. This year, it seems like there's a lot more openness to expense travel.
Yeah, totally. Um, so, all right, man. You want to hit our main topics for today?
Let's do it. So the first one is coming off of a tweet that I put out there last week. TikTok attribution. So, for nude, TikTok's been something that up until November, this past November, we couldn't crack. We tried a couple of different agencies. We tried a bunch of different solutions, just trying to make it work. And leading into November, I got curious. I was like, you know what? Let me just take some top Facebook ads that are 9 by 16. Let me just run them on TikTok. You start to see signs of life. And since November, we've been working hard to scale it up, make it work. We have this initiative to make it our second largest channel. And one of the things that I quickly realized, and I really validated last week again, continual validation here, is that TikTok attribution in the platform, in-platform TikTok attribution is abysmal. It's garbage. If you, from my perspective, for my brand, where if I were to use it as a guide on whether or not I should scale or pull back investment, we would be pulling back investment. We're shutting it off. It looks horrible. To
Isn't that
throw some numbers out,
isn't that isn't that isn't that crazy?
it,
Like
it's mind-boggling.
if you're TikTok and you learn this kind of information, isn't like and the brand is telling you, hey, your
Yes.
data makes me want to not spend money on your platform.
I had a I had a recent it's news to them actually, Rishabh. I had a good conversation with some of the product and engineers at TikTok last week. They're getting me into a closed beta, and they were doing like kind of the introduction process. They asked me, it's like, hey, how do you measure success on TikTok? What's your source of truth? Great question. And I was like, well, let me show you this very convoluted way of how I measure your platform because I don't trust your platform. And they stopped. They're like, wait, what do you mean you don't trust our platform? And I had to explain to them this whole scenario where the platform attribution is horrible. And they've actually looking to set up a second call, follow up call, just for that specific topic to understand the ins and outs of their platform attribution. My rep was on that call as well. And, keep in mind, again, the way these organizations work, it's completely separate teams. They not hardly, but they don't speak to each other unless there's a purpose and it's a cross-functional effort. In this instance, it's cross-functional because there's a brand, they want to do a beta. So there's a product team, there's an engineer, and then there's my rep for the account that it does the introductions. And he was like, yeah, actually, this is not specific to nude. I hear this across my entire portfolio where a lot of brands have to resort to post-purchase surveys or some sort of analytics platform like a Northbeam or a Triple Whale, or they do GeoLift, and every single source where they're looking outside of the platform, things look great, but when they actually look in platform, it looks horrible. And again, the engineering and product teams completely caught off guard. This was something that I think isn't really discussed internally. I think it hasn't been getting a lot of attention, and I feel like maybe depending on how much follow up there is out of these conversations, it might be something that they're going to start investing and looking into. I know that TikTok set up their CAPI with Shopify, which we are set up, and we have advanced matching turned on. And then they invested in offline conversions to help retailers measure in-store sales. But for whatever reason, their attribution, and we have our set to 7-day click, 1-day view. Even then, it's still not accurate. It's about 50% off. Sometimes it'll be greater, but about 60 to 70% off. Where my ROAS in TikTok will be like a 0.6, and in actuality, it's driving something that's more equivalent to like a 2.5, 3x, 4x sometimes. Yeah. So
Okay.
it's interesting. I
How
think
this
there's
doesn't
some.
this doesn't make any sense to me, especially well, unless their Cappy event management is like horrible, or like their version of Cappy. Unless their server side event management is like horrible, this is like, it honestly makes very little sense. Either that, or it's like a shocking number of people have a separate email address that they use to log
Yeah.
into TikTok.
Here's the thing though. When I was running Snapchat, we've since paused Snap. I'm looking to reactivate it here again soon. And even with Pinterest, I did see a similar thing. And so is this sort of just the nature of how things are? Is this actually normal? And then is Meta just really like has Meta's modeling just become so incredibly good that when you compare the two, it's like, well, there's something wrong with this one. In actuality, this is actually normal, and that one's just done a phenomenal job at filling in the gaps. That could be
So I will say, yeah. So I will say the one. Okay. So okay, now we're going into my world a little bit. Like I'm going to call back onto my live ramp days, because there is actually something that Meta, and like Meta in particular, has that everybody else does not have. Pinterest maybe has it a little bit. Meta is on your browser in addition to being in your phone, and that makes a massive difference. So Meta has a really good, what's called a cross-device graph. So yes, you open Instagram on your phone. You also open Instagram on Chrome. You also open Facebook on Chrome. And so they have multiple apps that have properties that you open in multiple environments. So you open it as an app, you open it as a tab on your browser. What that does is it allows Meta to cookie you first party, because you're on their app, in multiple devices and in multiple locations. Whereas TikTok, it's only on your phone. Like I don't know anybody who's browsing TikTok on their desktop. And
just
so
marketers. Just the marketers. Literally just the marketers.
Exactly. This is like the same thing with landing pages, right? Like, because I mean, again, my world, but it's like every time somebody says to me, like, dude, Richard, this doesn't look good on desktop, I'm like, my man, nobody's buying on desktop. Don't even worry about it. So, I mean, I get it. I get that there's some people who are buying on desktop. Don't get me wrong, but it's just like 90% of people are shopping on mobile for most brands. And so anyway, the thing that happens that Meta has that nobody else has is this cross-device graph and this first-party cross-device graph. And so they're way better at client-side event capture, even if the server-side event capture can be roughly the same for both. And so anyways, there is actually a structural difference for why Meta is always going to be better, in addition to their investments in machine learning-based matching.
That makes sense. There's, I think 2017 through 2019, no, 2017 to 2020, there was a feature in Ads Manager called Facebook Attribution. And they actually had cross-device mapping. So it would tell you a Venn diagram. Here are your desktop users, here's your mobile users, and here's like the overlap between the two, which was super cool. They actually also they were almost building an MTA within the tool. And it also had funnel breakdowns. Oh my gosh, this thing was so amazing. I'm going to see if I can pull up old screenshots that I took from when I used this. I used to use it all the time for retention strategies, looking at win back lapsed customers. When do people, like, it was basically lifetimely within Meta. It was so cool. And they deprecated it. But I do remember that one of the views reports that they had was that cross-device matching, where they would literally tell you your ads went to these many people and you drove these many conversions, and out of those conversions, here's how many were cross-device, multi-path, or single device, where they just saw the mobile ad, they tapped on it, and they purchased all within mobile. So super cool. And I think, they've had this data. This is, again, I remember seeing that feature 2017, 2018, and then they deprecated it around 2020, I want to say. Again, we'll see if we can pull up some screenshots and we can show it right here.
You know why? You know why they deprecated it?
No, why? It's horrible. Why did they get rid of that? That was like one of my favorite features.
Dude, they deprecated it at the same time that all of this privacy stuff was happening.
Oh my gosh.
And so this idea that you're going to track people and you can see exactly where they are, all that sort of stuff is no longer like in vogue, and so it doesn't make sense for them to show that anymore. Yeah.
Yep, I just found those screenshots of it. It's found it on Social Media Examiner. We'll pull it up right here. Anyone that was an ads manager in this time that like would actually check the other tabs besides ads manager, you're gonna have some nostalgia. This thing was amazing. Highly underrated. No one talked. It was like the best kept secret. No one really talked about it. But I remember working at an agency, and I would like come up with all these crazy. I was the media director of media strategy. I'd come up with all these crazy strategies and like use this and that, and people would be like, "How do you know all this?" I'm like, "It's my secret." I would tell some people whatever. Like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Oh my God,
Man,
that's
yeah.
so funny. Oh, man.
So, but
Dude,
back to TikTok attribution. It's so what we've been able to do is and actually got some buy-in to to bring on an experimentation partner so we can start doing match market geolift testing. But in the meantime, we're looking at post-purchase surveys, and we're looking at basically single touch attribution. We're looking at first click. So what I did is I analyzed over the past 24 months my acquisition MER by month, and then I put in Meta's ROAS first 1070, and then I put in I used triple well. I put in triple well first click, and then I did the same thing for TikTok. And what's really cool is I basically I did correlation functions, but what I was really excited about was seeing, okay, what was when we're hitting our acquisition MER numbers during what months, what is the corresponding Facebook 1-day click, 7-day click, and first click ROAS. And there was a very, very like simple pattern there, right? Where when first click is above this number, we hit everything. Everything's Facebook 71070 looks great. Acquisition MER looks great. When first click is below this number, things don't look great. The relationship was proportional too. So if triple well first click was down 15%, AMER would be down about 15% as well. And so I took that information, kind of built benchmarks, and then once we started getting data from TikTok, we would see, okay, are we above the number that Facebook would report? And whenever we were, we'd have amazing days. So I basically did that same report, but I did it by week. And basically built a benchmark out of that where I could compare TikTok attribution in first click relative to Meta. And if it was equal to or higher than Meta, then I would know that it would be equivalent to about, the target acquisition MER. And it was kind of a leap of faith because I would see like, okay, TikTok's working better than Meta. But then I would look at TikTok and be like, yeah, I'm hitting a 0.16 today. And we're like, oh, okay, like full on leap of faith here. Let's, the data suggests that it's performing better. Let's just try it. So I would double the budgets, triple the budgets. And we've been able to grow TikTok pretty significantly. I mean, we were basically spending like $500 a day. And now, we grew at 9x that. We've 9x'd our TikTok daily spend. And,
oh my God.
The business is healthy. We're driving more contribution dollars, more volume of revenue. So that was the other validating point is like, okay, I basically 10x'd our budget. Are we seeing like the equivalent amount of revenue, or is our margin squeezing because I'm just spending wasted spend on TikTok ads? And thankfully it's been a really powerful acquisition driver for us.
And I bet of course, with the higher spend, you have more data to have confidence that it is actually working, right? Because it's like at $500 a day, it's like you're kind of like squinting, and you're like, I think it's moving in the same. But at $5K a day, it's like no, this is like moving in the same direction. Yeah.
I was talking to the head of marketing at a large at a retailer, and we were kind of going off back and forth. If you find the thread, you'll see the conversation. And we moved the conversation over DMs. And one of the things that we were talking about that same discussion of well, what about when spend is so low? How would you measure it there? My methodology works when you have a meaningful amount of spend that you can feel the impact. And so I've actually outlined a way to do kind of a poor man's match market test. I shared the document with him. Haven't received thoughts and feedback yet, but I'm sure we can have the the sort of the instructions linked somewhere on the page on our site. But the gist of it is that you identify markets where, as a percentage of your total Shopify revenue, those markets are consistent. So let's say you look at Vermont. Vermont is always 0.05% of total Shopify sales. So if Shopify sales go down, Vermont is still 0.05. If Shopify sales increase, Vermont is still 0.05. Target Vermont, run ads to Vermont, and see if you can move the needle to make Vermont 0.06, 0.08. There's some more math that goes into it, but with a $500 a day budget, as long as that $500 is moving the needle on the total budget that you're allocating in Vermont, you should be able to see the needle move. There's some other things to consider. Is like you have to be driving sales in Vermont, or else you're just throwing money against the wall and driving sales to a market that's not interested in your product. But yeah, we can share that. We can talk about it in more depth next episode. And that could be a great way for the brands that don't have the funds to pick a market, identify the market, know how to identify the market, and then run lower spend and see if you can move the needle against those markets.
Brian, I got the marketing move for us. Like and retweet, and we'll send you the doc.
There you go. Like and retweet, retweet, follow, subscribe, send a screenshot, of a $2 donation to our Patreon, and you'll get the document. Don't forget your socials. I honestly, as much as annoying, I find those tactics kind of annoying sometimes, but man, I'm like, whatever, this is just the way it is. So I'm like always, you'll see my LinkedIn, I'm like liking, commenting, and then I'm like, all right, just give me the thing. I'll boost your engagement. But yeah, I do have a lot of appreciation because there are some really cool stuff out there. People putting in a lot of time and effort, and if all it takes is a like and retweet to get a really valuable resource, I'll do that all day. So
exactly. Yeah, it is value for value. At the end of the day,
yes.
It's like value for value. So, all right, man, we were skirting, but we didn't hit the very hot tweet, which is
discussion.
Dude, okay, hold on. I gotta read this one word for. I gotta read the poll out word for word because it's just so good. All right. So Barry asked literally 4 hours ago. Okay, do you think meta ad conversion data is over attributing, under attributing, both over and under attributing, or is it mostly correct? And those are the four options: over attributing, under attributing, both over and under, and mostly correct. And right now, the split is 30% over, 23.3 under, 25.8 both over and under, and then 20.8 mostly correct. This poll, dude, I don't know if he put incredible thought into this or zero thought, but it is impossible to not engage with. It has 240. Okay, so the guy has, let me see. I don't want to misstate anything here. So he has 22,000 followers. This poll has already been seen 3,000 times, and it already has 240 votes in the first 4 hours, which tells you that people cannot help themselves. But literally 10% of the people who have seen this thing have voted. Okay, so people are opinionated about that. I mean, what a beautiful question. Mm-hmm. All right, you want to reveal yours first, or should I reveal mine first? Which way we voted?
I'll reveal mine first.
And then okay, hit it.
And we can fight it to the death. All right, so I chose both over and under. We can get into the whys later, but both over and under on my side. And you?
I said mostly correct. Yeah,
mostly correct. So you believe that Meta's attribution is mostly correct, and I believe that Meta's attribution is a mix. It's over and under. It kind of depends. It just really varies. All right. So I'll go first.
Yeah.
Meta's attribution is one modeled.
Totally.
It's modeled. And we actually talked about that at the beginning of the episode where it's not bad. The modeling is good. It's better than TikTok. It's better than Snapchat, and it's better than Pinterest. That said, the attribution is a platform last touch. And so if someone has seen 10 different ads and the last ad that they see is something that's like last chance, get this thing, it's 40% off, get this thing, it's 20% off, that promotional ad that someone's like, oh, yep, that's right, let me click on that. That is the thing that's going to drive the credit. And so this becomes such a multi-layered question of
Totally.
like, are we asking for incrementality? Are we like how do we measure attribution? Are we saying this thing like we need to give credit to the thing that drove the sale? And in that scope, it it's I mean it's so multi-layered. I can't even begin to get into it. But for me, what I've found is that at the ad sets, campaign, and ad level, I will see a mixed bag of things that are overreported and underreported. And the reason I can see that is because I use a third party and I'm able to look at first click and last click. And I also will look at Shopify and I'll look at Google Analytics. When I have like, a campaign or series of campaigns and I'll have it all laid out in front of me, I'll just get such differing responses where Meta will think that ad A was the driver of the sale and it's assigning this to be the high ROAS. And when I look at it from a first click or a last click perspective, it's like the worst one out of the bunch, right? So if I pick 10 ads, ad A number one will be the best in Meta, and number 10 will be the worst in Meta. And then I'll look at it in third party sources and I'll see that the first one's actually the worst and the last one's the best. And that's that's common for me. I'll look at this across multiple ad accounts. I'll look at this across multiple, over the period of multiple days. And it's horrible. To give you an example of why I think it's over and under as well, last month, Meta's performance, as reported by the platform, was I was down like 20% month over month, according to Meta, which is my primary driver for acquisition. And the business was actually flat. It was up like 6% in terms of efficiency. So according to Meta, we didn't do that well. But when I close the books and I look at my P&L, the business is pretty consistent month over month. And so it's yeah for me, what I've been
Okay.
seeing
Okay.
for our brand, it's all over the place. All right, what's yours? What's your take?
Okay.
Mostly correct.
Man, I'm upset because we agree. I was like hoping that we could have a spicy debate, but unfortunately we agree.
Did I
Unfortunately.
change your mind?
So no, 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 no. It didn't change my mind. But so this was what so Barry and I engaged a little bit back and forth, and this is what I said to him, so that way I'm not like, sandbagging. I said like I suspect this is going to be a definition disagreement, making this poll very
Oh,
spicy. What I believe is if you ask Meta how many sales happened within a 7-day click window, i.e., that setting, it's mostly correctly going to tell you that. What it won't tell you is incrementality over other channels' efforts. Meta
yeah.
also uses that data to inform its targeting, so it's also the most useful, in my opinion. And so, like, actually, I agree with, so I had a feeling that this is going to be like what was the reason for the disagreement, and why I think this poll is so like this poll has no choice but to have like an even split is because people are going to interpret the question differently. And so but
Mm,
my TLDR here is like I actually agree with you. Like the reason why like Google and Triple Whale are going to tell you something different than Facebook is because Google and Triple Whale specifically do not have view through. So like and they cannot, right? Because view through by definition is like the platform is like, okay, Brian saw this ad last, so let's just call
right.
it like ad number 3. And but ad number one is the last one you clicked on. You went to the website. You go back later after having seen ad 3 in your feed, and then Google, Facebook will now attribute it to ad 3. But like your other two tools are saying like, hey, actually it was ad 1 because that's the last one that you clicked on, according to both like Triple Whale and Google Analytics.
Right.
And so yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we agree here because like I 100% agree with you, and I'm just like, look, Facebook is telling you what it's saying it's telling you, and it's literal about the definition,
Yeah.
um, and that does not mean that that's actually how you need to drive your business. And I think that that's the big kerfuffle with this poll. is like, if you use that data to drive your business, then you're definitely going to be spending on the wrong things, right? Because precisely because of what we talked about.
Yeah.
But instead, if you're just like, okay, this is just like a literal definitional thing, and it's like, okay, this is what this means. I now need to go and ask these other questions to make sure I understand which ones are actually driving my business. You, that is what you have to do, right? And that's what I told Barry too. I was like, dude, like Facebook is mostly correct because it's like it's picking a definition and it's going to tell you that definition, and it's like, but that doesn't mean that's how you run your business, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Two,
so
three points there, I think. And then the other one is kind of a question. We have to also remember that Meta's definition of a click is literally any engagement with the ad, right? So it's not outbound
totally,
clicks.
exactly.
It's a click. So a like, a comment, a share. If you have ad copy that requires you to like tap it to expand the view, that's all a click. So that's not something that the third-party analytics tools don't have visibility into. The other thing I want to call out is on the modeling front. I'm actually curious if any other brands see this, and maybe this is like a poll that we should run. But for me, between the hours of, call it midnight, at account time, from midnight to 3 p.m., 4 p.m., the ROAS in the platform is so low. I'm talking like decimals, like point 9, point 0.8. And then right around like 6 or 7, the entire account just like, it's like 2.5, 2.8, 3x. It like just completely takes off. And this is, at every layer of the ad account. I actually took a screenshot of this because I was in I was in Foxwell Founders, the Slack community. Someone was asking a question. I was like, I'm actually curious. So at 10 p.m., no, sorry, at 10 a.m. in the morning, I took a screenshot of performance that day. And then later that afternoon, I took a screenshot again. I was able to see the difference. I'll see if I can pull it up. But I do find that depending on the time of day, when that modeling kicks in or when there's like a backfill of data, performance can vary a ton significantly. So that's the other thing. And I guess that the question that I want to get to, the third point, and how should brands navigate this? Because what I find is Meta will give credit to the last touch point within its ecosystem, but the messaging of that creative can really swing things. And so let's say I have three images for the sake of simplicity. I have 3 ads. I have one video. I have one image that is like, direct response, like this is, get this result in this amount of time. And I have one image that's like last chance, 50%
Promotion.
off, buy this today.
Yeah.
The video, great click-through rate, low cost per clicks, low CPMs, highly, highly valuable. In Meta, just by giving you probably can already imagine which is going to be the best performer in Meta, right? It's going to be the 30 or 40% off message there. If you follow Meta, you're going to put your investment, your money there. And what worries me about that is that you are drying up all of your bottom of funnel. That's like bottom of funnel, those people that needed
Totally.
that sale messaging to then convert. There may not be incrementality. Maybe it's just like a thing that, I was going to get it this weekend, but screw it, I'm just going to buy it right now instead. And if you run that message and you're like, I need to invest more in that, like put all the money. In fact, let's pause the video because the video is the worst performer. Let's put all our money into the static image that's promotional. You could be drawing your bottom of funnel. And in actuality, that video was driving a lot of new site visitation. It was driving a lot of add to carts. And so that's the thing that I actually struggle with. And it's a point of discussion with, my vendors and partners, is because I measure them through first click. I reward ads that are really good at driving a new site visitation. I look at cost per new site visit. I look at cost per add to cart. I look at bounce rates. And I also look at first click ROAS. I reward everything that hits those benchmarks. But if you don't have a tool that lets you do that, it's like, how do you navigate that? Do you agree with
I think
that
this
sort of
is I think this is where, and you're probably going to also agree with. I would not have thought of that. What I would have said is you need to take an incrementality view. And
Hmm.
so let's just say you dial up that promotional ad. If it is actually incremental, you should see that if you're changing the ratio relative to the video ad, for example, right? And conversely, you should dial up if you flipped it the other way, and again, that last one was actually incrementally useful, you should see your sales go down. And
Right.
so, like, this is why I think like Facebook's numbers are good for like, here's like literally what it is, but it is not a measure of incrementality. And so, at least what I would do is I would just say like, can I see incrementality by changing the amount I am spending on any given ad? And so let's just say you do actually use Facebook to drive. If you're using Facebook to drive, the thing that should not happen is you should not get confused if you're like, wait a second, this is my best performing ad, but when I increase spend, like everything is becoming worse.
Yeah.
That is the outcome that you want to avoid. Like that is actually teaching you exactly what is happening. It is teaching you what is incremental, what is non-incremental, what is attribution in conflict with incrementality. And we've talked about this in the past in our earlier episodes, so you guys can go back and look at that episode where we talk about experimentation in specific. And Brian has seen this a lot, where attribution looks good, but incrementality is the inverse of that, right? And so I think like that is the thing that I would say to people is like, yes, you can do that, but just don't be surprised. Like, know what it means when you see that
Right.
kind of outcome. I think like you have to have heuristics in order to make decisions. So for you, that heuristic is, on a first click basis, what are the different metrics that you can hit? And those heuristics come from giving you your brand. Here is the metric that I have seen be the leading indicator of showing incrementality. And so it's like when I hear you say like, hey, I see what that first click ROAS says, I see what the last click ROAS is, and I triangulate, it's like, okay, like he has the heuristics already from looking at this data so often that he knows what is a leading indicator of incrementality. But actually underneath that, what's happening, it's just like how like VCs do like, oh, I'm going to pay you 20x revenue or 10x. It's like, that's a
Right.
heuristic. That's like
Yeah.
not actually the price or the value of the company. But you have to make decisions fast. You can't sit there and
Yeah.
calculate every time. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a if you're a smaller brand, I think what you outlined there is exactly the right way of doing it. And I want to say that's how we did it starting out at Nude. And the biggest thing is keeping a change log. I have my media buyer change log where even now, like, I paused this ad set. I doubled this ad set. I added cost caps to that ad set. I moved these ads over to ASC. And that change log is so crucial because I basically my change log is like, type of change, the name, like details of that change, the date that change happened. And I have another column that's like my follow up tab. So I put in a date where it's like, check in on this 7 days from now or 14 days from now. And if you don't have that, you're gonna make these changes. You're gonna turn off that one ad because it looks bad, and you're gonna forget. Like, you're probably so busy, you're gonna forget to go back and change it or check and make sure that ROAS doesn't come down. And if it has, to Rishabh's point, turn it back on. It's it has been confirmed to be incremental. The other thing too, and I guess this is like the thought provoking question is like, is this what ASC is solving for? Right? Like ASC is give me 150 ads. I'll figure it out. I will drive. I know what's that first click, so I'm going to allocate spend accordingly. I also know what's that middle click, middle funnel item, so I'll allocate spend accordingly. I also know what's last click, and I know how much spend and frequency and impressions it takes to get those people, those last mile people. And overall, your performance is going to look great, but don't worry about the ad level performance because that's sort of a black box secret sauce
Totally.
where spend is being driven. That would be
Totally.
that.
I,
Yeah,
yeah, I,
you
I
believe
think
that?
this has to be true. This is like, it's, yeah, I mean, I believe it because it must be. So like, I mean, and you've seen this in your own ASC accounts, I'm sure, because if I've seen it across a bunch of accounts, okay, where you look inside the ASC account and on any given ad level, you're just like, why is Facebook spending more money on this ad that is not doing as well according to its
Yeah.
own numbers? And it's like, well, obviously, like people at Facebook, this is okay. So also one of my big things is like whenever people say like, oh, Facebook is wrong, it's like wrong again, wrong. It's like a definitional thing. It's like, okay, yes, you don't want to drive certain types of business decisions based on that number, but like the people at Facebook are very intelligent. It's $1 trillion company. They always win in the long term. So clearly over time they have made good decisions. It must be true that they know that the way that they will drive better results is like within that ad set, they're going to modulate spend and see what the overall impact is going to be. And as they learn what is incremental versus non-incremental to revenue, they will put more money into the one that is driving incremental revenue on a marginal basis. That is how that system must work. There is no other explanation for that, right? And I think it's a very good tool, and it's very useful that Facebook enables that type of ad buying. So yeah, I think Facebook is like highly sophisticated. I think they know what they're doing. History shows that they are highly sophisticated and know what they're doing. So yeah, I'm biased too, right? But I think, and again, I'm not saying you should drive your business using those numbers. You should just, you should trust that these people know what they're doing, basically.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I want to see if there's a way to validate that. It's mind-boggling that if that's what's happening, which I'm not saying isn't. I'm just, I'm leaning into this with a sense of skepticism, constructive skepticism. But it's like, why wouldn't Meta just come out and say that? Look, attribution is such a multi-layered, multi-dimensional thing. ASC solves it for you. ASC handles the incrementality because we know what that first, second, third, fourth, fifth click is and how that journey plays out across various consumers by consumer, personalized by shopper, and ASC handles all that for you.
No. This would be a disaster. They should not do this. Okay, this is not going to be good for me, but I'm going to say it out loud anyway. The reason this is not a good idea is because people buy two things. They buy certainty and they buy performance. Or they buy stories that they can tell their boss, which is like what I categorize as certainty, and then performance secondarily. And the problem with that kind of message, which is like, hey, here's all this sort of stuff, is like when it becomes harder to explain or when explanations become hidden in the algorithm, imagine you're like an agency saying like, hey, the explanations are hidden in the algorithm to your client. Like that, yeah. I don't think that's a winning message. I really don't. And yeah, I have lots of firsthand evidence to suggest that this is the reason why. In fact, I would say that it tells me that their product marketers are very smart for not having done that.
Okay, so I just pulled up an ASC campaign for today, just to see. And I have my first click ROAS on one column, I have spend, and I have ROAS, Facebook ROAS, as reported by the platform in 7-day click, 0-day view. So this ad, right, it's getting the most of the spend. It's getting 38% of the spend, the highest. In Meta, it's driving a 1.11 ROAS, right? 38% of the spend, the highest, 1.11x ROAS. First click, 2.54. So first click ROAS, 2.54, 38% of the spend allocation, 1.11 in Meta. Looks horrible in Meta. One of those instances where you would look at this and you go, why is Meta spending money on this thing? I need to turn this off. The second spender has 25% of the spend. It's driving a 2.97 in the platform. And it's got a 0.6 first click ROAS. So just looking at those two ad examples, you have an ad that's getting the majority of the spend in first click, looks incredible in first click, but has a horrible in-platform ROAS. And you have this other ad that's getting significantly less allocation of spend, 2.97x ROAS, but looks horrible in first click. So there might be some, this, this is obviously one data point, but this would align with this thesis of ASC is doing its thing. And it's taken into account the incrementality, the first, second, third touches. It's also taken into account the last touch. And the spend distribution it's got is nearly like a 40-25 split in spend. And then there's like, the remaining percentage, it's not going to add up to 100. The remaining percentage is like, there's like, I don't know, like 80 different ads in here. But those two are the primary drivers of spend. And the allocation would be that Meta appears to be taking into account the first touch point and rewarding and spending accordingly to keep that top of funnel healthy, knowing that this other ad is going to drive the bottom of funnel. Interesting.
Beautiful. Dude.
Yeah.
I cannot think of a better way to end the session on that note
trust
of beauty.
The process, I guess. I want to keep, peeling this back, but I guess the takeaway is, if you have an ASC campaign, ASC was built to take this into account. So like if you have an ad that looks horrible in Meta, pause it, add it to your change log, and check back in 7 days and see what's the trend line say. Is it tapering? Is the overall campaign now tapering because you've shut this one ad off? Or is it staying consistent? And if it stays consistent, then maybe you made the right choice. But if it starts to taper the moment you shut it off, and it won't be immediately, it might take a couple of days, but if it starts to taper, you might want to turn that ad back on. And this is for the rest of the account as well, just overall account. So kind of a cool little thing we've just, uncovered here. The product team is like, dang it, they figured it out.
And we're doing it live. All right, man. This has been another great session. All right. We'll see you on the next one, folks.